בוקר טוב, היום
This is a $20 bill. It is a debt note. It's an IOU that has been issued by the Federal Reserve System. Now, what the Federal Reserve System does is it keeps track of all of the funds like this that are issued into the economy. It keeps a very strict accounting and serial notes and everything else for every one of these cash debt notes that are issued into the economy. And the banks keep an equally strict accounting of every quote unquote dollar that is issued as quote unquote money of account into the economy. Well, money of account is just an accounting version of this. They are again issuing a debt, okay? And they keep real good track of the debt. And that's how you get a national debt. The national debt is the sum total of all the arrears of all of the notes that are floating around out there, either as money of account or as actual printed cash notes like this. But okay, you've got this humongous national debt here, which also includes interest payments on the national debt. All right, we're going to see why that's all bogus. But here you have your debt note, your IOU. Let's see what happens. It gets spent into the economy as the paycheck of Nancy Crawford, who works for the Department of Labor. Yeah? Okay, so she's got her $20. She's going to go out for lunch. She goes in, she orders a cheeseburger, fries, a couple of Cokes, maybe a milkshake. At the end, she goes to this guy who gave her the cheeseburger, the fries, the milkshake, and the malt, and she gives him this, her IOU. And he accepted because it's legal tender. All right, so he's forced to accept this. This is her IOU, and he's accepting it. Well, she goes back to lunch, from lunch, I should say. And, he puts it in his cash register. And here comes another customer. Well, he buys lunch for himself and his family. And in the process, this guy gives him the original $20 IOU as change. Okay. So now this fellow walks down the street and he goes to a spice shop and he sees this jar of curry paste that he just has to have. And so once again, he gets the curry paste and he passes the note. Okay. We take this for granted. It happens in front of us all the time, all the days of our lives. And we never really think about it, do we? But this is the same IOU. And now it's managed to extract cheeseburger, fries, Coke, a frosty fountain drink, and the curry paste. And it's still in circulation. All right, so now we have it back again. And he's going to go and he's going to pick up a gift for his teenage daughter, who just loves Chuck-a-cherries. So he gets some Chuck-a-cherries. And once again, he gives the note, the IOU, to the guy who sold him the cherries. Once again, the guy puts it in his cash register and waits for another customer to come in. And she just has to have this beautiful big bottle of fancy perfume. All right. And so she gives her $20 to the guy who's selling her the perfume. Okay. All right. What happens? It's sitting in a cash register. This guy comes in, he spends $50. He gives the $50 to the fella here, and he gets the 20 back as change. There it goes again. Well, he decides he's going to surprise his wife and buy some Christmas decorations and candles and stuff. And so he buys this balsam pine Christmas candle. All right? Are you beginning to get this? It's still the same IOU. It's the very same IOU for $20, the same amount, the same IOU, and it has now cycled through the economy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and it has each time extracted actual goods, physical goods, in exchange. So you have a $20 debt, and you've got a candle, a bottle of perfume, a large quantity of curry paste. You've got some cherries. You've got a cheeseburger and fries and Coke and a fountain drink. You have all these goods in exchange for just this one debt note, this one IOU. So this one debt note has extracted what? $100 worth of goods, actual physical goods, in exchange for a debt of $20. Now, we just followed that through 5 different transactions. And you have to ask yourself, how many transactions could a bill like this go through in its lifetime? 1,000? 10,000? I'm sure that we can figure out an average number of exchanges that a bill like this goes through before it crumples up and gets thrown away and burned, all right? But the entire time that it is alive and circulating in the economy, it is accruing exactly $20 worth of debt and it's accruing all of these goods and services in exchange. So this is how people have paid with real debt. They've paid with real credit, with real things, with real physical goods and services. And that's how they have accrued a gigantic national credit that is already paid for in goods and services. And that's why the accounting of the national debt is seriously messed up and not correct. Okay, if this system had been working the way that it normally should, as a zero-sum credit transaction system, the moment that this was exchanged, the very first time, there should have been an exchange in which the debt canceled out against the credit, and both were gone. They were no more. Poof. They zeroed out. The debt created the credit created the debt. Boom. You had lunch. Good for you. Okay. There's no debt on either side here because what? It's a zero-sum transaction system. All right, so what didn't happen? That didn't happen. There was no accounting on both sides. They separated it out into two separate account books. They killed the ledger. There was no ongoing accounting. There was no balancing of the books. So that what you got was this gigantic national debt that was tracked, and this even far more humongous national credit that was never accounted for. And now we do have this little problem. Because as you've already observed directly, within the first couple of transactions, at most, you have wiped out the debt because you've already given more than $20 worth of goods and services, right? So there is no more national debt. In fact, it's paid for, right? However, because there's no accounting, there's no balancing of the books, this continues to sit there and appear to be a debt, along with all the money of account from all the loans, you understand. That's how you get 37 trillion, right? But it appears to sit there. And then somebody says, oh, well, we have to get payment on the debt. We have to get bursary on the debt. Somebody has to pay us interest for sitting on all this debt, right? So even though this debt has been paid and doesn't actually exist, they're charging you interest on it. And it's not small interest, it's big interest. They're charging you interest on a $37 trillion debt that by definition was paid off long ago and doesn't exist. Okay, so there is no national debt. It was paid off within the first couple of rounds of the economic system. And there is no interest owed on said national debt. I mean, if you really wanted to get down and scrape for it, you might be able to argue that there was an ephemeral debt that lasted, 72 hours after the release of the credit? Maybe 2 months on a house loan? It's silly. It's ridiculous. It was never meant to be that way. It was meant to be zeroed out with every transaction, but it wasn't. And since it wasn't, what we can safely say is there is no national debt. There should be no appreciable interest payable on that debt. And instead, what you really are left with is this humongous pile of goods and services that have been paid out that is maybe what, 1,000, 2,000 times, maybe 3,000 times the national debt that's already been paid out as goods and services and never actually been paid for? That's the national credit. That's why people have large quantities of prepaid credit that is owed to them. So, what do? We still have these floating around in the economy causing trouble, right? So when we have someone come in and they exercise their $50 worth of prepaid credit, what do? We take this guy out of the system. We take this bill, or we take the money of credit, we take $50 off the national debt, boom, and we just get rid of it. It's automatically accounted for finally. And once that whole thing is done, and we are done with this, and we're done with the quote unquote national debt finally being accounted for, then we have nothing left over, but still an incredibly large pile of prepaid credit that can be used as the new currency in the commercial system. Because remember, commerce is air jurisdiction. It's a matter of mental and thought energy. It's a matter of debts and credits. It's a matter of paper. For a better word, it's paper. Whereas we live in the real world, and for us, it's the new bottle of perfume. It's the cherries. It's that cheeseburger with fries. And now you can see how we wound up with both a humongous national debt, how we wound up paying usury interest on a national debt that really didn't exist, and how we wound up with an incredible pile of prepaid credit owed to the consumers. And that is how we propose to return the credit that's owed to the consumers and get rid of the national debt and start a whole new accounting system that will reflect reality and not create problems for living people.
אוקיי, זהו, זה סיום.